Creating tension and capturing a reader's attention is a primary goal of every writer. We all strive to capture our audience's minds and weave tension into every page. Antithesis is our avenue into this. Antithesis is a literary technique of juxtaposing contrasting ideas in parallel structures, but also at a larger scale within plot and characters. You can use antithesis to convey conflict, highlight contrasts, deepen thematic impact, and most importantly, hook your readers by creating tension on every single page. This is achieved through two core levels of antithesis that are at play in Sudhakar Maratha's novel Convenience Store Woman. Antithesis of macro tension, elements that are in contrast that affect the entire story, from setting to characters to plot to arcs. And antithesis of microtension, contrasting and opposed ideas at the sentence or scene level, for example in descriptors, describing emotion in action scenes and in dialogue. Antithesis is exploited by a large number of authors, and is a powerful technique for building tension. One author who uses it notably is Sudhakar Maratha, a Japanese novelist with several highly acclaimed works. Maratha is known for building thought-provoking works by telling a story through characters who are out of place in their setting, and weaving tension into every page through her action scenes and dialogue. She does this most prevalently in her short novel Convenience Store Woman. The novel follows Kiko Furukawa, a 36-year-old who has worked at a convenience store for 18 years. Kiko is constantly being bothered by her family and co-workers to get a better job and a husband, but she has no interest in it. She is happy in working at the convenience store. She eventually has a horrible man who exploits her, move in and pretend to be her partner to appease her family, but realizes that she was happier before and kicks him out, returning to her old life. The use of antithesis at both the micro and macro level in the work results in an interesting character, a thought-provoking plot, and tension-filled dialogues. An example of a section of her novel where she exploits antithesis to create tension at the micro level is the following quote. "The baby started to cry. My sister hurriedly picked him up and tried to soothe him. What a lot of hassle, I thought. I looked at the small knife we'd used to cut the cake still lying there on the table. If it was just a matter of making him quiet, it would be easy enough. My sister cuddled him tightly to her, watching them I wiped some cream from the cake off my lip." This is an example of the kind of microtension that is created in Convenience Store Woman, and that you can create the antithesis at the micro level in your own work. It is employed to juxtapose Kiko's detached perspective on with the emotional, nurturing behaviour of her sister. The scene opens with a crying baby, prompting the sister to hurriedly comfort him, showcasing her maternal instincts and concern. This caring response is contrasted starkly by the protagonist's cold, pragmatic thoughts of, what a lot of hassle. The antithesis reaches its peak in the scene when the protagonist observes the knife used to cut the cake and considers that silencing the baby permanently will be easy enough. This chilling thought starkly contrasts with the sister's loving actions, cuddling the baby to soothe him. Kiko's emotionless and almost utilitarian viewpoint, considering a violent solution to a simple problem, highlights a disconnect from societal norms and expectations regarding human relationships and empathy. A huge amount of tension is added to the scene here by pairing the polar opposites, a baby and the thought of violence. As the protagonist wipes cream from her lip, an act that contrasts with her sister's tender care, the antithesis underscores her emotional detachment and inability to comprehend the natural human response to a crying child. This use of antithesis deepens our understanding of the protagonist's alienation and her struggle to fit into conventional societal roles, and paints Kiko starkly as an outsider, adding a level of depth to her characterization. All of this functions together to add tension to the scene. Kiko is not a violent person. It's one of the only times that she thinks something like this, especially about a child in her family. But the use of this description and her thoughts of this scene is so out of place and so shocking that it creates a huge amount of tension in the scene and makes the reader need to keep reading to find out what happens next. This is how Maratha has used this technique for gripping microtension. Another example of how she introduces the tension in her work is in the very first paragraph of the book. A convenience store is a world of sound, from the tinkle of the door chime to the voices of TV celebrities advertising the new products over the in-store cable network, to the calls of the store workers, the beeps of the barcode scanner, the rustle of the customers picking up items and placing them in the baskets, and the clacking of heels walking around the store. It all blends into the convenience store sound that ceaselessly caresses my eardrums. This first paragraph is exploited by Maratha to immediately establish the tone of the novel and hit the reader with the tension inherent between Kiko's character and the world she's in. The contrast between the cacophony of noise she describes and the peace she feels, the way Kiko feels about the store versus the way we might expect a regular person to feel about the store, immediately establishes that Kiko is not like other people. It is how Maratha has immediately built tension as the reader immediately develops a sense of intrigue into the character on the page through the depth that this first paragraph and its contrast adds. Maratha consistently uses this strategy to put Kiko outside of normal, as her reactions are so starkly different to what would be expected by the reader from a regular person. This engages the audience and adds depth and tension to the character. From these two quotes that develop microtension through antithesis, you can uncover several benefits of the technique and how it can be applied to your own work. The tone can be starkly established by using language that at first glance would be out of place to use for the mood. For example, the implication of violence in a scene about a sister caring for a baby. Character can be built steadily through their unique reactions to things. An antithesis can make a dull scene engaging, as it introduces the unfamiliar to a scene with the familiar. For example, a convenience store. That's something the reader is very familiar with. An excerpt that shows the macro tension that is created in the work is the following scene. They were all so ecstatic about it that I even had to wonder whether they'd lost their minds. Wait, what? Since when? What's he like? Wow, that's amazing. I was so worried about you. What would become of you, Kiko? I'm really so pleased for you. Thank you, I said simply, feeling a bit weirded out by how jubilant they all were. Come on, tell us about him. What's his job? What does he do? He doesn't do anything. He did say he had a dream to set up his own business, but it does seem to have been all talk. He just loafs about at home. They all leaned forward, suddenly serious. Yes, some men are like that, but they tend to be kinder and more sincere. And charming, right? My friend fell in love with a guy like that, although I can't say what was so good about him myself. The best thing to do with a man like that is getting pregnant. The obvious antithesis in this scene is the excitement from Kiko's friends in comparison to the way Kiko is reacting internally to that excitement, but the antithesis Murata uses goes further than that too. As the reader, we are fully aware of how happy Kiko is with the man she is telling them about. In this quote, we see that everyone in Kiko's life is more happy that she is living with an unemployed slob, who, as it was established earlier in the work, was fired for assaulting a fellow employee and is cheating on her than they were when she was enjoying her own life in her own way at the convenience store with no partner. Not only does this create tension for the audience as it shows how removed from society's wants her own desires are, but it also creates tension through the contrast of what everyone in Kiko's life is telling her is good versus what the audience knows is good. This puts distance between the reader and society in the novel, and for the first time the reader is next to Kiko on the outside of society. Not only does this create a lot of tension, but it also characterizes Kiko and builds an extra level of depth into the work. This is achieved through the pairing of these opposites, what society expects of Kiko versus what she actually wants, and what her friends are telling her is good versus what we know is actually good. A similar level of macro tension is developed through the antithesis in the next scene. I don't know anymore. She kept crying uncontrollably without responding to my requests. I turned in surprise. Just then there was a sound at the bathroom door. I turned in surprise and saw Shira standing there. I'm so sorry. To tell you the truth, your sister and I just had a fight. I made a real embarrassing spectacle of myself, didn't I? You must be really shocked. I stared open-mouthed at him. It wasn't at all like him to be such a smooth talker. The fact is that I'd connected with an ex-girlfriend on Facebook. We went out drinking together. Kiko was furious when she found out. She refused to let me sleep with her and shut me in the bathroom. My sister stared at him for a while as if mulling over the meaning of what he was saying. Then she clutched hold of him and stood up, her face the picture of a believer who had just come across a priest in church. So that's what happened. I see. So that's it. And when I heard that you were on your way back up to the apartment, I thought I'd better keep out of your way. I didn't want to be lectured to. Yes, absolutely. When I heard that my sister was just loafing around without a job, I was really worried she was being duped by some weirdo. But now I hear that you're unfaithful too. That really is inexcusable. She looked as happy can be as she started laying into him. So that was it. Now she thinks he's one of us. She can lecture him. She's far happier thinking her sister is normal, even if she has a lot of problems, than she is having an abnormal sister for whom everything is fine. For her, normality, however messy, is far more comprehensible. In this scene, Murata employs a similar method of injecting tension through antithesis. In the scene, the focus of the contrast is Kiko's sister's reaction. She comes to her apartment out of the blue and finds that Kiko isn't really together with the man she had moved in with. She thinks her sister is a freak and weird and cries because of it. What cheers her up, though, is when the man lies to her that they are together, but he cheated on Kiko. This makes her sister very happy, as she thinks Kiko is normal again. This contrast of the way her sister reacted to each of these revelations is the opposite of what the reader feels towards Kiko. It adds tension to the story as it once again hammers home how much Kiko's own wants don't align with what society wants for her. Tension is also created as Kiko's sister does the opposite of what the reader would expect a loving sister to do. It is established that she loves Kiko and wants what's best for her, but her blindness to what that is and the opposite reactions to the reader fill the plot and scene with tension and keep the reader wanting to read more. Through these examples, you can see that antithesis can be used to effectively build tension in a greater story and in individual scenes. This technique is a powerful one, however, and is very adaptable, and you can see that it also works in the story to develop tone, build characters, explore themes, and draw engagement. Without Murata's employment of antithesis in her work, the story would lack the depth and intrigue that is incorporated in every page, and its central plot would fall flat. We can take several lessons from Murata's use of this technique and apply it to our own writings. Here is an example of an excerpt from my own work, where I use antithesis at both levels to build tension in the short story that I wrote, following a man who becomes obsessed with his co-worker, who is scared into forming a pseudo-relationship with him. Her hands skirted slowly across the table and closed around the flimsy paper cup the waiter had placed down for us when we arrived. She had been doing that a lot, taking small sips from her water in a lull of conversation. Not that she had been talking much before, anyway. Her eyes met mine briefly, and my heart swelled at the eye contact. She was beautiful, and mine, made from a piece of me, I thought. So perfect. I was proud of my persistence. I had asked every day for a month for this, and she finally realized the truth, that she was me. She was ripped from my chest, pulled from the sinew and bone, breaking her way through my ribcage on the way out. I could feel the carved space she had left, aching for her return, her slow crawl back in. The pulsing lulled when she was near. I was ready to consume her back to that cabin she had left. James, I'd better go. She gestured meekly to the door, with her head to the door of the diner. No, that wouldn't do. She'd only been here 10 minutes, and she had barely spoken or looked at me at all. Oh, you don't want to stay? We could go somewhere else. Anything you want. No, she said rather quickly before starting, grabbing her bag. I'll see you at work tomorrow. She hesitated slightly, like she didn't want to leave without my permission. I could smell worry on her, worry that she would upset me, that I would be sad. How sweet. She was so kind. I nodded with a smile, one she didn't return before hurrying off towards the door. This excerpt uses antithesis at the micro and macro level. At the micro level, it juxtaposes James' thoughts about the girl and her thoughts about him, the way James describes her versus how it might be typically expected to describe someone you're romantically interested in, and her obsession with her, yet his reluctance to name her. At the macro level, it juxtaposes the incompatibility between the two characters. This creates tension in the story as the reader is aware that the difference in their thoughts about each other cannot end well, and in the scene itself, as you get the view into the obsessive way that James views her, this macro tension is created as the reader gets the sense that based on the differences between the characters and their feelings, that there is some kind of climax or blow-up coming as a result. Tension is also created more effectively through descriptions that James uses. They are visceral and gory, almost violent. This is the kind of language being used to describe what is supposed to be romantic love, goes against what the reader would expect from this kind of scene, and builds tension into the work. How can you use this technique in your own work? Antithesis can effectively add depth and tension to your writing, so here's how to use it. Consider what elements of your story could use more depth and what scenes feel flat or not tense enough, especially emotional scenes and action. Consider what opposing elements you can add for effect. Some powerful and specific tips, but remember, antithesis is a broad subject, so get creative with your use of it. The micro level is to highlight internal conflicts. Place opposing thoughts or emotions within a character's internal monologues. This emphasizes the struggles and makes the development more compelling, as well as adds depth and realism to their characters. For example, he felt a surge of hope and a pang of despair all at once. Next, use juxtaposition in language. Employ contrasting language in characters' thoughts and dialogues to highlight internal conflicts. For example, a character who is outwardly cheerful but internally struggling. Next, identify the scenes where you want most of the tension to sit, or where your character feels the most out of place or out of their element, and highlight this through antithesis. Next, balance subtlety and clarity. Ensure contrasts are clear but not overly obvious. Subtle contrasts can be more impactful. For example, using simple language for routine actions and using more complex language for internal thoughts or monologues. Next, consider how you can enhance elements of the text through conflicting elements. For example, emotion. A powerful tool for making emotion more impactful is through taking a step back, so describing intense emotions with minimal or opposing descriptors will enhance the effect of the scene. Next, this technique can also be used in basis or conjunction with many other techniques, so in building other literary devices into your work, consider where there is room for antithetical elements. For example, in pathetic fallacy, in personification, in irony, oxymoron, simile, metaphors, and foreshadowing. For the creation of macro tension, consider how you can contrast characters by developing character foils or characters who don't work together with opposing traits or beliefs. Emphasize themes. Use antithesis to articulate core themes during attention to dualities in your story. And identify and create compelling core conflicts. Understand the internal conflicts of your characters and work with the natural tension created by internal conflict to introduce factors that influence your character's motivations and opinions. In conclusion, antithesis is Powerful tool for working with opposing elements in your story to create tension, highlight themes, and inject story with depth and realism. This all works together to create tension in your work and on every page, and keeps your reader hooked into the story. This works at both the micro and the macro levels. The tool has an extremely varied application and scope and can be used in a number of interesting ways, so consider next time you feel that a character or scene lacks depth, how might you incorporate antithesis to add dimension and tension? Thank you.